Good evening, I'm Ben, and welcome to the show where you and I gather around this campfire to hear some of our fellow campers' scariest experiences. Whether you're a new camper or returning one, I'm glad you're here. Tonight's story is about a father who thought the monster haunting his son was impossible because he was the one who invented it as a kid. But when a made-up story starts appearing under streetlights outside of your home, you're forced to confront the possibility that some myths don't stay fictional once they've done enough damage. Now, without further ado, do you want to hear a ghost story? I never thought a lie could outlive me. I know that sounds crazy, but I need you to understand something before I tell you the rest of the story. The thing my son started seeing, the thing he called the Umbrella Man, wasn't supposed to be real. It was never a local legend. It was never some old story passed down through the neighborhood. There was no tragedy attached to it, no article in the news, no dead man under the street lamp. I made him up. When I was 14, there was this kid at school named Noah Treadwell. He was quiet, skinny, the kid who would flinch when people said his name too loud. He lived 2 streets over from me. And for reasons I can only describe as cruelty in its purest form, me and my friends decided it'd be funny to mess with him. It started with whispers, rumors really. We told him that if he stayed up too late, he might see someone standing under the street lamp at the end of his street, a tall man in a black coat, holding an umbrella, even though it wasn't raining. We told him the Umbrella Man didn't move while you looked at him, but every time you checked again, he'd be a little bit closer. We told him he only appeared to children who had already been noticed. We told Noah that if the Umbrella Man ever stood outside your house at night, you couldn't let him see you through the window. The story changed pretty much every time we told it. That was the fun part. We'd add details just to watch Noah's face change. Sometimes we said he had no face. Sometimes we said he smiled really wide. Sometimes we said he would tap his umbrella on the sidewalk. I remember one time we even dressed up as the Umbrella Man, tapping the umbrella outside Noah's house. This event I remember. I remember hearing Noah cry from inside of his house. My friends and I eventually got in trouble, not for the Umbrella Man specifically, but for bullying. The teachers had heard enough, parents got called, and I was grounded for months. My father, who had no room for moral nuance, made me walk over to Noah's house and apologize to him on his porch. I remember his mother staring at me. Noah moved schools for high school. Same district, just the next town over. His mother thought it would be better for him to get a clean slate. And that should have been the end of it. And it was the end of it for almost 20 years. I got older. I became someone better, I think. Or at least someone more ashamed. I got married and had a son of my own. I lost my wife when Liam was 6. Since then, it's just been me and Liam, in a small house in a neighborhood just outside of Columbus. A quiet place. Sidewalks, trimmed lawns, one flickering streetlight at the corner where our road meets the next. Liam is 9 now. He's a smart kid, but sensitive. The kind of boy who says sorry after he bumps into the furniture. The first time he mentioned the Umbrella Man, I barely registered it. I was making his lunch for school, half awake, spreading peanut butter on bread while he sat at the table in his pajamas. He said very casually, "Dad, who was the man outside the house last night?" I asked him who he meant. "The one under the street lamp." I thought maybe he meant our next-door neighbor taking his dog out, or someone just simply walking home late. I asked him what the man looked like. Liam just shrugged. "I don't know, but he had an umbrella." I remember thinking that was odd, and inquiring more. An umbrella at night? Well, he wasn't using it. Well, he was just holding it. I looked outside. It was a blue morning. There was no dew even. Had been no rain that night. It was probably just somebody walking home, I said. He just started eating his cereal. That night, around 2 a.m, I woke up because Liam was standing at the foot of my bed. Not crying, not screaming, not doing anything. Just standing there staring at me. I sat up so fast I nearly hit my head on the headboard. Liam, what's going on? He was pale. He had that drained look kids get when they've gone past fear and entered a state of frozenness.
He's back,
Liam whispered. Who's back?
The man with the umbrella.
I followed him into his room. His curtains were half open, and through the window I could see the streetlight at the corner, glowing that sodium yellow color that makes everything look old, but the road was empty. No one's there, buddy.
Yes, he was,
Liam protested,
looking in the window at me.
His voice didn't wobble. That's what unsettled me, really. He sounded certain. I checked the locks, the front door, the back door. Then I sat in his room until he fell asleep again. I told myself kids just see things. Streetlights do weird things. Shadows become people if you're tired enough. Still, before I went back to bed, I looked through the blinds in the living room towards the corner. There was no one there. The following week, Liam's insistence got worse. He refused to start going into his room once the sun set. Then, he stopped wanting to be near windows at all. He'd angle himself strangely in the living room, so he didn't have to face the street. If I asked him why, he'd get irritated at this.
Because he can tell when I look, okay?
I asked where he'd heard any of this story at school, online, from another kid, but he was insistent that it wasn't a story. The next night, while I was brushing my teeth, I heard him crying in the hallway closet. I found him crouched inside among coats and shoes, hands clamped over his ears. Liam, what is going on now? He looked at me with tears all over his face. And he said words that I remember oh so well.
He was tapping his umbrella on the sidewalk.
I froze as that detail hit me hard and I fell to my knees. I hadn't thought about this story in years. I hadn't spoken it out loud since I was 14. I asked him what he meant.
The umbrella. He was tapping it 3 times. And he'd stop, and he'd do it again.
Again, I asked him who told him this story. But again, he protested.
No one told me this story. I'm seeing it happen.
I checked outside immediately. Our porch light was on, and our yard was silver blue under the moon. There was nothing moving. No footsteps, no voices, no pranksters, no dog walkers, no neighbors. I looked from the edge of our porch towards the streetlight down at the end of the corner. And maybe this sounds even more ridiculous. The streetlight was empty, but it looked like something had just stepped away, like it was still occupied. That night was the first night I had thought of my childhood, specifically of Noah. I mean, really thought of him. Not as some old embarrassment, not as a childhood regret polished smooth by time. I thought about the way he used to look over his shoulder in the hallways, the way he'd leave class with books pressed in his chest. I thought about the apology I gave him on his porch, his mother's face, the fact that I had never once asked what our story had done to him after we were done laughing. So I searched for him online. Treadwell wasn't a rare enough name to make it easy. I found 6 men in Ohio alone. But then I found one in Indiana. An obituary for one Noah Treadwell, 34, survived by no spouse, no children. Died a few months earlier. I won't pretend I knew what to feel. Grief felt stolen. Guilt felt obvious. But more than anything, I felt something uglier. Fear. Fear that my son had somehow reached backwards into a thing I had buried and dragged it up by the roots. A couple nights later, Liam asked me a question I wasn't expecting.
Dad, when you were a kid, did you see the Umbrella Man?
I paused and quietly looked over my shoulder at Liam. Why would you ask me that?
Well, because he knows your name too.
There are moments where you feel things so intensely in your body that your mind doesn't even have a chance to catch up. My scalp tightened, my mouth instantly went dry. What did you say? Liam was now just staring out the back window.
He said you used to tell people about him.
I crossed the kitchen in 2 steps and knelt in front of him. Liam, listen to me. No one has been talking to you. There is no man outside. Do you understand? No one is there. The Umbrella Man is not real. The moment I said it, I knew how desperate I sounded. Liam started crying. That night I let him sleep in my bed. I stayed awake with the lamp off, sitting against the headboard with my phone in my hand and a baseball bat from the hall closet leaning against the nightstand. Every creak in the house sounded deliberate, like it was meant to be there. Then around 1, it started to rain. Not a storm, just a thin, steady spring rain. And at 1:17, just as I was about to fall asleep, tap, tap, tap. Not in the house, not on the windows, but from outside. It was distant but clear, a hollow, rhythmic sound from the direction of the street. My son was asleep beside me, but the sound pulled me out of that room like a hook into my spine. I stood at the bedroom window and looked through the slit in the curtains. At first I only saw the rain light up in gold under the corner streetlight. But there in the light, tall, too tall, a narrow black coat hanging straight down, an umbrella open just above his head, though the rain was barely more than a mist, and his face hidden behind the umbrella. This man wasn't doing anything, just standing there at the corner under the light. I don't know how long I stared, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. I only know that every stupid detail I invented as a boy came back at once, not as a memory, but as a presence. And I got this overwhelming sense that looking at him was itself a mistake. He lifted one hand off of his umbrella handle and pointed, not at my house, but directly at the window, directly at me. I stumbled backward hard enough to hit the dresser. Liam woke up screaming. I called the police. I told them that a man had been standing in the streetlight, staring into my home. They sent someone out, a young officer who walked the block with a flashlight, checked side yards, spoke to neighbors. They'd all seen nothing. He suggested a camera system and asked if my son might be having night terrors after the loss of his mother. I wanted to throw this police officer through the wall. Instead, I thanked him and shut the door. The next day, I kept Liam home from school, called a child therapist, ordered 2 outdoor cameras and motion light. I told myself that this was being rational, practical. That afternoon, Liam colored at the dining room table. I went into the garage and dug through some old boxes until I found my middle school yearbooks. Noah's face was younger than I remembered, softer. I sat on the concrete floor, turning through the pages until I found what I was looking for. A note from my old friends, stupid and scribbled across the back page. Don't let the Umbrella Man get you. I stared at it for a long time. Then I did something I should have done decades ago. Drove to Noah's old house. His mother still lived there. It looked different from the house of my childhood memory. Seemed smaller. The yellow siding was now peeling. She answered the door slowly. I recognized her instantly after all those years. I introduced myself. The moment she heard my name, though, her expression changed. Not anger, something colder. A recognition without welcome. I told her I knew I had no right to ask anything, but I needed to know if Noah had if he had carried that story with him after he left town. She stared at me, gave me a couple up-downs, before finally,
He saw the Umbrella Man for years.
My stomach dropped. I asked what she meant. She said that Noah knew the story was fake. Eventually, he had admitted that to everybody. He knew that myself and my friends had invented it to mess with him. But knowing that didn't help. He'd still wake up crying, saying there was a man under the streetlight. As he got older, His feelings changed. He stopped saying he was afraid and started saying that he was just embarrassed. Started pretending that it didn't bother him. But sometimes she said that he would just admit to standing in the kitchen at 3 a.m, looking out the window.
He told me once that the worst part wasn't thinking that the man was real. It was thinking that if enough people were cruel to you about something, that you would make room for this thing to enter the world.
I couldn't say anything to that. And then she just blankly asked me why I was there. I told her my son had started seeing the Umbrella Man. And for the first time, her callousness cracked. And she looked at me with pity. Before closing the door, she said one more thing.
Noah said the man only started moving after the boy who invented him forgot.
When I got back home, Liam was asleep on the couch. The house was dim and gray. I thought that maybe telling him the truth would do something, that the confession outright in itself might count. I noticed every curtain in the front of the house was open, and I knew I hadn't left them that way. The living room windows faced the street, faced the corner. Standing under the light, motionless in the early dusk light, stood the man. Closer than the night before, not far from the curb now. And just like last time, his umbrella was open, face hidden, just waiting. I snatched Liam up so fast, he woke up confused. I carried him into the bathroom, into the center of the house where there were no windows, and I locked us in. I don't mind telling you, but at this point in time, I was crying. Not because I thought a monster was coming through the door, not exactly. Because I knew with a sick, undeniable certainty that this thing belonged to me. Maybe not in the way a child belongs to you, more like a debt does. More like fire belongs to the person who started it. Liam clung to me and asked what was happening. So I finally told him the truth. I told him that I made the story up when I was a kid. I told him I used it to hurt somebody. I told him I had been cruel, cowardly, and sometimes terrible things don't stay buried just because you stop speaking about them. He listened without interrupting. When I was done, the house fell silent. Then came 3 soft knocks, not on the bathroom door, but from the hallway just outside. Tap, tap, tap. Liam buried his face in my chest. I don't know why, but I decided to confront this entity. I know who you are. I made you, and I know what I did was wrong. Then from just beyond the door came a voice so low and dry, I almost mistook it for the house settling.
No, you made room for me.
I've replayed those words every day since. I called the police again, rambling more this time, saying somebody was inside. They found no one, no forced entry, no footprints. Just a weird static bursts in my cameras and a single frozen frame where the pixels look like a warped image of a dark figure. Not enough to convince them I wasn't crazy. Liam and I left the house. I didn't sell it, I didn't pack carefully. I just took Liam and what we needed and drove to my sister's place in Kentucky. And for a while, everything was better. Liam slept again, ate normally, laughed, played with his cousins. He stopped asking to keep the bathroom light on, stopped freezing at windows. A couple months went by, and he told me he thought maybe the Umbrella Man couldn't find us because there weren't any streetlights outside Aunt Rachel's house. I let myself believe that was true. But last week after I tucked him in, he asked me if I had ever said sorry to the boy I made up the story to torment. I told him yes, but not well enough and not like I believed it. Liam nodded, like that mattered. Then he said something that I'll never forget.
That's probably why he's still standing out there.
What do you mean?
The man with the umbrella.
Then he pointed over my shoulder to the hallway. I turned around so fast my back popped, but there was no one there. And then from outside the house, far off the end of the gravel road, tap, tap, tap. So that's my story. I don't know if the Umbrella Man is a ghost, guilt, or some shape cruelty takes when it has been fed years to stand up on its own. I don't know whether I created something or invited something in. I only know that my son sees me now and sees what I did. If you're listening to this and think children's stories can't hurt anyone because they aren't real, I can tell you this much. Some things don't need to be real in the beginning. They only need someone to make room for them. Thank you for listening to this story. I found it to be an interesting tale. People are always talking about if you speak of something enough, you might speak it into existence. And sometimes I think some of the worst things we live with are the things we convince ourselves are harmless. Jokes, stories, a cruel moment from long ago, something we tell ourselves we left behind, that we've changed, learned from it. But sometimes, whatever we invited in at that time, keep living in the people we wounded. And sometimes, they find a way to keep living in us. I have no show announcements this week, other than what's already been posted on Patreon and Instagram. If you have any comments, please leave them on those posts. If you would like to support the show and gain access to our monthly bonus episodes and early access to show episodes, head over to patreon.com/doyouwannahearaghost story. But as always, I'm just glad to have you all as campers on this journey. Please keep sharing the show with anyone you think might like these stories, or someone you're just trying to scare. If you're enjoying the show, please leave a review. I would love to hear from you. Until next time.